So thank you very much. Thank you, Jerry, and all the organizers for this excellent meeting. So I was surprised when I came here. The receptionist said that vaping is not allowed here because it's a smoke-free environment. I think, Louise, you have a lot of work to do educating the public because it doesn't matter if it's a smoke-free environment. E-cigarettes don't emit any smoke at all. It's a completely different issue. Is anyone drinking water? There's a lot. How do I know if that's not vodka or something else, you know, tequila or anything? I mean, you can't know. It's the same, you know, it's the visual resemblance and the visual aspect that defines the decisions here, for example. So let's go to the next slide. I'll start with what the WHO has said since 1986. That people cannot achieve their fullest health potential unless they are able to take control of those things which determine their health. And the European part of the WHO discussed about the empowerment in public health, that people should have access to information, be included in decision-making, especially when it's about their own health, and make demands on the institutions and the government, the governing structures, on getting the right level and quality of information about health-related issues. So on the next slide, what do we know about smoking? And that's universal knowledge. Everyone is accepting that now. First of all, I'm not going to talk about the risk. Everyone knows the risk, but it's extremely difficult for people to quit. We know that for years. Smoking is a very highly dependent habit. It's not a disease. I have to disagree with what the WHO is saying, and I think many of the difficulties in approaching smoking cessation is coming from the definition of smoking as a disease, and much of the denial by smokers to go to get some help from smoking cessation services or from smoking cessation clinics is the fact that they don't consider smoking a disease but a bad lifestyle choice, a bad habit. The medications that have been developed over the years, starting from NRTs and moving to oral smoking cessation medications, they fail in the majority. The highest success rate from varenicline Sampix is something like 20-25% when you look at smoking cessation at 1 year. And both the smoking duration, the amount of time, the number of years that you're smoking, and the consumption are the major determinants of the risk for disease and death. So next. So what the scientific community know about vaping. First of all, there is no tobacco, no combustion, and no smoke coming from any cigarette. And this is something that the general public need to understand. There is not a single study in the literature that has found that vaping even approximates the risk of smoking, despite what you've heard and you've seen on the media. Yes, it may be more toxic than the filtered air in a laboratory when you do a study, you compare e-cigarette aerosol, we call it vapor, but in reality it's aerosol, it's micro droplets, it's not gas. So filtered air might be healthier, but not compared to smoking. There is no discussion, there is no comparison between the two. And regular use of e-cigarettes is predominantly observed in current and former smokers. We don't have a significant part of the non-smoking, the never-smoking population, whether it's adults or youth, being attracted into e-cigarettes by becoming regular users. You know, experimentation is a completely different story, but when you assess experimentation only, you are overestimating both use and the potential adverse effects, because with experimentation, no one is going to get any type of harm. So we need to evaluate regular use, and of course we need to continuously monitor the situation, because we don't want the cigarettes to become a new trend for the society and for the non-smokers. We want them only to be used as smoking substitutes. So next. Unfortunately, these are the stories that the people know about e-cigarettes. It's a very small collection from media here in the UK about what the people know about e-cigarettes. Flavored e-cigarettes produced unacceptably dangerous levels of cancer-causing toxins. We replicated this study. We found the levels to be 3 orders of magnitude lower than what he was reporting. We are about to submit the paper. Great risk of stroke from e-cigarette use. That was nicotine infusion in mice at huge doses. And they the mice didn't even develop a stroke. The stroke was induced by the researchers, and they were just finding the area of damage, comparing those who were infused with nicotine and those who were not. E-cigarettes can damage sperm because of flavors. Again, it was a lab study. It was not a study on humans where they assessed sperm motility. Cancer-causing benzene, very interesting study. The study found that the benzene levels in e-cigarettes were lower than the benzene levels in the environment. But they found some. So they said, we did find some benzene. It was a very recent study, a couple of weeks ago. And of course, again, flavored e-cigarettes 250 times higher levels than safety. This is, unfortunately, what the people know, what the society knows, and this is what defines the misperceptions and the misconceptions about e-cigarettes, especially among smokers. So there are many questions. Next, please, Joanna. What is the message delivered to smokers eventually from all these stories and from all this publicity? Who is responsible for this misinformation? It's a very important question. I can tell you my opinion from, before we start discussing it, but I'm willing to hear you too. It's very usual to blame the journalists for everything. All the bad stories are coming because of the journalists. Unfortunately, I must say that in this case, in the case of e-cigarettes, most of the misinformation is coming, not most, all the misinformation is coming from the scientific community. And the reason is very simple. A journalist receives a press statement. People who are not really experts cannot judge the content of a scientific publication, which is very, very technical. Even for scientists, it's very difficult to judge the content and critically approach the study. So the journalist is never able to understand whether the press statement, the press release, is relevant or is presenting correctly the findings of the study. Characteristic case was a few months ago. It was so eminent that they had to remove the press statement. There was a research group in the US who said that they tested, of course, again in a laboratory study, vapor compared to e-cigarette smoke in cells of the oral cavity. And they released a press statement saying that what we found was that e-cigarette aerosol, e-cigarette vapor, is as toxic as tobacco cigarette smoke. But when I read the paper, the authors themselves who released the press statement, they mentioned in the publication the cells were exposed to e-cigarette vapor for 1 to 4 weeks, but none of the cell lines could be exposed to tobacco cigarette smoke for more than 24 hours, because after 24 hours, all the cells died. And that was interpreted by the researchers in the press statement, of course, not in the publication, that e-cigarettes are equally toxic to tobacco cigarettes in cells of the oral cavity. Now, I understand that many people are afraid that, what I said previously, that e-cigarettes are going to become a new trend, that they're going to attract a lot of never smokers, including adolescents, and it will be a new, trendy habit in the same way that smoking was in the past decades. But I'm not sure if it is acceptable, especially for the scientific community and the public health community, to use misinformation in order to address a fear, because this is going to have unintended consequences for the smokers. Then what are the unintended consequences that we are observing in society right now? Because fears is one thing, but what does the evidence say today about the consequences of e-cigarette use on a population level? And how should we assess the impact of vaping on public health on a population level? I mean, if we isolate kids and we're going to see some experimentation and very, very low regular use, is that enough to determine that e-cigarettes create problems in the society? It should always be a balance, and everything in society is a balance between benefits and side effects, adverse effects. So yes, of course, you expect, as with any new product, that there will be some experimentation or even some use by people who shouldn't use them, but you also have to think about the positive aspects. And now next, it's going to be a commercial break. We wrote a book. I had the privilege to be assigned by Elsevier. Elsevier is the biggest scientific publisher in the world. I was assigned as a guest, as a handling editor and author of 2 chapters in a book titled Analytical Assessment of E-Cigarettes from Particle Exposure to something else, which I don't remember now. It's a long title. It is not very technical. I mean, there are parts of the book that are very technical, but I think that even for the general public or for public health officials who don't have any specific background in chemistry, it's a good opportunity to see what's happening and clarify several misconceptions that exist about propylene glycol and glycerol. You know, a person who doesn't know in depth what's in the e-cigarette may think that e-cigarette contains chemicals which were invented just to be used for e-cigarettes. And people don't know, for example, that glycerol has been approved for human consumption since 1959. Since the first time that any legislation on grass generally recognized as safe chemicals for human consumption was ever made. And propylene glycol in 1982. So 40 years ago, almost. Okay. So that's it for me for now. But I think that it would be much better. Yeah, I was very fast. You must admit that. I think it would be better to have a live interaction and a discussion between each other, because I really need you to tell us what you think, what you perceive, what you are seeing, and what's your overall impression on this matter, because I think that's the best way to approach all the misinformation that is out there. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.